son. Where'd you find this?
Buckle up, buttercups. It's time to get down to business. It's the Totally Legitimate Business Podcast. Totally legit.
It's the Totally Legitimate Business Podcast, and we're back once again with the magnanimous Daniel Oglesby. Thank you for joining us.
Hello. How's it going?
How you doing, man? It's been a while.
It has.
How you been? You changed locations? What do you think about the South so far?
So far so good. Like we were saying before we got on here, it's hot as hell here. Middle of summer, but no, it's great. It's a nice change from Colorado. Missing Dave, but we're still making songs for one of these nights.
Thank God for the internet.
Remote now. Yep. But hopefully we'll be able to still book some shows here and there. But
love that.
Yeah. How about you, man?
You know, I've been pretty good. I've just been getting down a bunch of very ridiculous rabbit holes as usual.
Yeah.
And you know, this is one I'm really stoked that you wanted to do this one, but also that you wanted to do the Bob Lazar one, because like I feel like we talk a lot about the stories, but we don't really analyze it just a little bit further to see like what the alternative viewpoint is.
Right.
And Tom DeLonge and To the Stars Academy is an interesting situation. So today we're going to talk about the very strange situations surrounding To the Stars Academy, Tom DeLonge, and his role in rolling out UFO disclosure. Oh man, it's going to keep going, isn't it? It's going to keep going. It's just going to go for a second. That's fine. I want to believe.
I like that you have that queued up.
It's I don't use it as much as I should, but when I do, I'm very happy when I can.
Well,
okay.
It's fitting. I wore my UFO shirt today that my wife got me as well. And,
yeah, it really is the perfect outfit.
Here, I've got my got my stack of Tom DeLonge books.
Damn, it's the collection.
Yeah. Just picked up Trinity yesterday, the new one, and Secret Machines, the fiction, and he has another series called Poet Anderson, which I have not read yet. I've had it for a little while, but I hear it's good.
I also see you got a UFO neon in the background.
Yep, my wife got me that too.
Sick. Yeah. Sick. So I guess let's kind of start with what To the Stars is. So I've got that website pulled up. I'm gonna share it here. 1 second.
Yeah, you know, I've been wondering about To the Stars lately because I haven't checked back in on it since like they were trying to raise money, but I'm pretty sure they shut down like the scientific part.
Yeah. I'm sure they did. When it came out, it was supposed to be this all-encompassing thing where Tom DeLonge's connection with high-level government officials would allow him to write fiction that's loosely based on the real stories of the discovery and development of this technology. And that they, too, would have like a school or educational component, scientific component that would have the explicit purpose of trying to build a starship. And that he revealed this in like 2017. There was like a press conference. It's kind of iconic. He's like sweating the whole time, pretty profusely, and
wearing a suit.
It was very very fun to watch. Yeah. But now basically this was always a part of the plan, but using that media. So I guess now it's really kind of completely restricted its focus to just producing content based off of these stories or based off of the knowledge of some of these things. So
okay, that's what I kind of thought.
And this is the current board of directors and advisors. Hal Puthoff's still there. Can't remember how many of the rest of these people are original. And then here's kind of a loose timeline of the releases of the thing. Poet Anderson is the first. Yeah, so that is the focus. That's what they do now. And I when I searched Tom DeLonge's name, this is like one of the first links that came up, and this is like the To the Stars merch store, and I love how spiteful that is. Yeah, I love how he just he created an entire line of clothing.
He's pushing that merch hard now too. Like if you follow him on social media or anything, that To the Stars stuff, and good for him. I think he should have a Tom Was Right shirt, because
I love it. I love that.
It's crazy. I never see him credited, like when I see, those videos that they put out. I think was his the gimbal one.
It was one of the first wave of those. I'm pretty sure it was the gimbal, but that was technically like Lou Elizondo. Like he just did it through Tom DeLonge. Tom DeLonge was like the mass consciousness gateway to that. But he does, that is true. He does not get as much credit as I guess maybe he deserves in bringing that conversation.
It is cool to see though, like the little the To the Stars logo on that video though. Every time I see it in the news or something, it's like, man, he made it happen. It's crazy because I heard him talking about it for years, and then to see his company logo in the news all the time regarding this subject, it's pretty cool.
Yeah, well, and that is an interesting point in the sense that like there was a long time where people were straight up calling him crazy, but then in 2017, seriously, and they were just like, he's losing his fucking mind. And he deserves a victory lap. I would have made a Spite shirt. I love it. I think that's fucking awesome. But I guess as kind of time has gone on and the whole conversation around UFOs and UAPs like continues to emerge, and the deception becomes even more multi-layered. The true purpose and concept is like, what is it here? What are we doing? So I haven't read any of the stuff. I'm familiar with this from a number of different avenues, reading about it when it happened, and definitely watching, analyses. The New York Post, the Basement Office has a whole ton of like UFO, UAP counterbalance argument videos.
I love those videos.
Yeah, they're great. They're really well done. That is very good journalism, even for the Post. And I'm just interested, first of all, to hear like the true content of the books, and kind of understand or contemplate on like what purpose is this serving? Is this just prepping people for the inevitability of a bigger realization, or is this like, are they trying to sell an agenda? You would be the expert there because you've read the stuff,
Definitely not an expert, but I was a big fan for sure, because I grew up listening to Blink, and the first songs I ever learned to play on the guitar, which was my first instrument, was Blink-182 songs from Enema of the State. Like it taught me how to play guitar, and so and I was also into UFOs and stuff growing up, but then got really into it as an adult. And so then to find out like, oh, Tom DeLonge is into this shit too, that's awesome, but to see everything that he's done, it's been pretty wild. Like I don't know what's gonna come of all of it. It still seems like Secret Machines, it kind of appeals to a niche market still, but I think that'll change as Legendary Studios, I think, bought out the rights to Secret Machines to start a new series, I think with HBO.
Wow.
And so Legendary is who did the Dune movies. So I think it's going to turn out pretty fucking awesome. But
I mean, it sounds like a winning combination for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think it's going to be an HBO series is what I think Tom had hinted at some point. I might be wrong, but but yeah, if that's the case, then it's not going to be a niche thing anymore. I think it's going to become part of, kind of the zeitgeist of mainstream media.
I mean, I think you kind of summed it up. I already think it is there. I think that was kind of the entire explicit purpose of this, just because of Tom DeLonge's influence. Whole generation of people who will kind of just follow what he does. And the fact that he's just been on the forefront of this subject for much longer than other people. I think even when they launched it in 2017, like that was making major fucking news. Like people were seriously reporting on it, and in every publication. So I definitely agree that it is working. It is working for selling the people the idea that maybe there is some other shit going on here.
Yeah. Well, and people right now, and so I was listening yesterday to a couple of the episodes of Coast to Coast that Tom did back in, like, I think one was in 2011 and one was in 2016, something like that. And so 2016 was when the first Secret Machines book came out, and I think that's why he was on the show. And the way he explained everything is, he had an opportunity with someone in the military, was asked to do this presentation it was like a birthday party or something, and he was supposed to like announce something, and he was asked to, and he was like, okay, I'll do that if I can get 5 minutes alone with the guy, and he won't say who it is or anything like that, but he got some time with this guy, and he mentioned the project that he wants to move forward with, which is like this, To the Stars project, where he wants to put the government in a better light because he thinks he understands what it is they've been dealing with, and that if this story was put into some kind of fictional adventure story, then it'll get people, propaganda, but it'll get people on board and also understanding what it is they're dealing with, and would support the government in that, put the government in a better light, I guess, which is pretty wild, because people have such a distrust of government, I guess is what I was getting at. So it's interesting that that's his approach, but that's how he kind of got his in. And then from that point on, he continued meeting people, and then he was set until he met this last guy he was like, what do you need to make this project happen, to like bring this story to the public in like a bite-size, palatable way. And he was like, I need a team of advisors. So he was assigned 10 military advisors to help him with like doing shows and podcasts and the books. Like they read the books before they put them out. They tell him what to leave out. Like it's pretty wild. Like I don't know who is, he hasn't given any insight into who's involved, but until To the Stars came out, and then he had his board of advisors there, which I don't think are the same people.
No, not many of them. Hal Puthoff is like one of the only OGs. Yeah.
But and so Secret Machines is historical fiction, but it's written with seeds of truth in it. And they also have a nonfiction series. I listened. There's 2 of the books out. There's another one coming out in August or September, I think, the third final one. I've listened to the first 2 on audiobook, and kind of lost me a little bit. I'm gonna have to like listen to it again. I don't know. Maybe it was just the way it's written. It just kind of bored me, I guess. But in the fiction series, though, basically he's just he's trying to sow seeds of truth into this fictionalized story to give this macroscopic bird's eye view of this phenomenon and what the government is dealing with, and give it like a human perspective, and the books are great. I mean, it's very kind of hero's journey type structure, but it's 3 characters that all come together in the first book. So there's a pilot, and then there's a woman who her father was very wealthy and had and she's trying to figure out, he passes away, and she's tracing these funds to these private projects and trying to figure out these aerospace projects and trying to figure out like why he was doing this and why he was so secret about it. And his death was mysterious. And then there's a journalist reporter who's investigating these things as well. And also there's another guy who's in like essentially like the Men in Black or something. I don't know, like the private government black ops program that's like a government outside of the government.
Yeah.
So it's just following all these characters, and they all come together at the end. Like, I don't want to spoil anything, but so you spend, what makes these books so intriguing, that is you're reading them and you're like, okay, which parts are, true? Like which parts of this are based on real events? Because he weaves history into the story so well that, you're kind of left guessing, when you're done with the book. It's like, man, and does it in such an entertaining way. And the way he explained on Coast to Coast, the reason he wanted to do it was because like I think he kind of explained it like when you're in school and they tell you, about a war and how many people died and what year it was and you just leave class and go, okay, well, I know about that now. But there's no connection to it. And so that's his whole reasoning, and was his pitch to these military advisors that he got on board, was like he wanted to make it create a connection, like connect to the story. And then when you connect to something, then you want to dig more into it, and that's a great idea. I think, and it's like you said, though, it's propaganda. And so that's where it, can lead, I don't consider myself like a conspiracy nut or something, but when you start getting into this stuff, though, you do start wondering, like, is Tom just being fed bullshit to feed to the public? Like, who's really contrling the narrative here? Like, is he really on the good guy's side?
So this, let's definitely break this down, because this is like what I've always been like of two minds about it. So newspapers, TV shows, networks, companies that make movies, they have, when they make a movie that involves something government, it's not uncommon for them to involve government advisors who will act as a gateway between them and getting helicopters, Humvees, whatever, but also just saying, this is how we do it. But then also saying we only want it to be perceived this certain way. It's been like a long time known that New York Times, big publications, they have people who are like filterers from the CIA, FBI, making sure that nothing that they don't want getting out, including perception-based analysis, opinions, censoring it for some reason. They want to control the perception. So Tom DeLonge is surrounded by a bunch of very pro-military people, and effectively they're doing the same thing that those people do at major publications or with movies or with TV. I'm sure they maybe have even done that in other capacities during their times in wherever they worked. But that is immediately suspect to me. Like, it was always immediately suspect that, all these people are going to have a particular frame of mind. And the more I hear from Tom DeLonge as the years go by, it was like that these entities are evil, and America and the government is doing like the scientific good to try and fight these evil beings that are, he won't necessarily say they're demons, but like that's kind of like where he's getting at, is that they are demons. I'm interested to know if any of that is in any of the books that you've read, and in what context is mentioned in the books.
Not quite. So in the second book, it kind of gets into, I think what they mean to imply, or the author means to imply, is CRISPR, kind of. So the two of the main characters, two of the pilots, they're both, basically the journalist is putting it together. She's doing a bunch of research, and she's on the run from this secret government too, and so she's kind of undercover, and she's doing some digging into these pilots' past, and finds that there's a doctor that was visiting them throughout their childhoods, and giving them some kind of shots, and she doesn't see how it's related to their health, and finds that, and so the reason it matters is one of the pilots is able to fly a flying saucer, like UFO craft that they have, and he's one of the only people that has ever done it, or the only, I don't know, like everything's so mysterious the whole time, but he's able to fly one of these crafts, and throughout the book, all the characters are like getting visions of like these bug fairy like people, and hearing like a buzzing sound, and everything keeps referring to like the swarm. They keep talking
Insects.
about the swarm. Yeah, so it's very insect based. And so that's where I was kind of getting at with the CRISPR thing, is like maybe genetically enhancing or altering soldiers to be able to, utilize these crafts that like maybe because like how ants, I was listening to a podcast like yesterday called Patterns Tell Stories.
Mm-hmm.
They cover Tom DeLonge a lot. It's a great show. Highly recommend it. But they're talking about how ants communicate, and like sometimes they can through their antennas, I think was kind of my understanding. Like, and so if they're talking about there's this poisonous caterpillar, I think it was, and like they'll start to eat it, and then the ones that figure out, oh, like there's something off about this, they'll send out a signal that will go through all of the ants, and then the other ants will come around and start burying the caterpillar so that it's out of the way from, their mission of finding food and taking it back, and how that signal, like almost telepathic chemical hormonal signal will reach through the whole chain of their little society. And so that they're thinking, CRISPR, maybe that's like some conscious way of genetically, allowing a human being to interact with one of these machines or crafts so that they can consciously connect to it. And that's how he flies the craft in the book, just to be clear. I left that part out. And so it's not, like a plane, there's no controls. He consciously flies it and like kind of becomes one with the craft.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of how they dive into that, if that makes sense. So, and I don't know what they mean by the swarm, and they don't really get into that. And as like when they're fighting other crafts and whatever, like I said, it's very adventure story. So when they're fighting other crafts and things ramp up in the story, they don't know where the other crafts are from or who they are. But they refer to them as the swarm. Like they can feel, like the pilot can feel their consciousness.
Yeah.
Speaking to each other as like one consciousness almost. And so I don't know if that answers your question. So it's not very like spiritual, but it has something to do with like hinting at, they're one mind, whereas we're independent beings, and even interacting with them can alter your perception, because they were kind of able to, the characters start seeing things from each other's minds after like having encounters with the creatures or with these government folks. So it gets really weird, but they don't really explain it. So I'm waiting for the third book to come out. I've been waiting forever.
Maybe there's some more detail on that.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, and again, like, I'm not even saying that none of the stuff is real. I'm just saying that we have to consider the sources, and the sources are definitely going to be very pro-government, and it's going to be like presented in a certain way that, in my opinion, is going to be more in line with the staged alien invasion theory about disclosure. And there's people that think the true disclosure is going to be some staged alien event, and I feel like, if anything, this is the narrative that Tom DeLonge and these folks are kind of playing into, with, again, like America being this righteous scientific humanity organization that we know it not to be. But in particular, definitely Hal Puthoff, I don't know how much you know about Hal Puthoff specifically, but his tenure is fucking long. In fact, here, let me just pull up his shit here.
Yeah, I don't know a ton, but that's a name that comes up over
all
and
the
over
time.
And over again.
Yeah. And this, I first heard about this. I first came across him in Third Eye Spies, which is a really great documentary about the Stanford Research Institute, CIA, Russell Targ, Hal Puthoff, and the people that were spearheading the psychic spy programs. And I've also been a huge proponent of Limitless Mind and anything that Russell Targ has written for this reason. Russell Targ doesn't. Hal Puthoff does. Russell Targ doesn't go into any alien shit. He's purely mental, and he's purely, from the scientific perspective, how can we quantify, mental phenomenon like telepathy or remote viewing or something like that.
Right. Very
interesting shit. But Hal Puthoff was one of the people that worked with him, and we'll just quickly go over his Wikipedia because it's fucking ridiculous. Oh, look at that. University of Florida. Electrical engineering degree from the University of Florida. Oh my gosh. I didn't even realize this, but he's a Scientologist and he's OT7.
I didn't know that either.
That is hilarious. But see, okay, there we go. There's another one right there. Do you know anything about like the Scientology, the belief system of Scientology?
Yeah, I'm familiar with it. I haven't done a big deep dive into it, but I'm familiar with the structure of it.
There's a little bit of hilarious overlap there that makes this so much funnier. Yeah, okay, where's here? Oh, and pseudoscience. Wow, savage. Yeah. In the 1970s and 80s, Puthoff directed a program at the Stanford Research Institute to investigate paranormal abilities, collaborating with Russell Targ in a study of the purported psychic abilities of Uri Geller, Ingo Swann, Pat Price, Joseph McMoneagle, and others as a part of what they called the Stargate Project. Both Geller and Swann convinced Puthoff and Targ that they possessed psychic powers, though Geller employed sleight of hand tricks. And to be fair, yes, some of these guys were not just mentalists, or they were just mentalists. Like they were excellent at controlling perception in a scenario to make you feel one way. But there was tons of anomalous behavior, like the spoon bending or like magic tricks. Those are magic tricks. But like some of the shit they were doing with remote viewing was ridiculous. There was no magic. There's no way you could make up what you make up and have it be as accurate as it was. But anyways, like put off was like a major piece of this. When people talk about psychic spies, remote viewing in the 80s, this is him. It's Hal Puthoff and Russell Targ. Okay, so then here we go. In the 1980s and 90s, Puthoff co-authored papers using the model of stochastic electrodynamics that leads to a model of inertia as an electromagnetic drag force on accelerating particles produced by interaction with the zero-point field.
I didn't know he got into all this too.
Yeah, he's deep, and this honestly, I'm not surprised at all at how light this Wikipedia page is. But I mean, there you go. You want to read more about Hal Puthoff, CIA? I'm sure there's a ton of shit.
What's his deal with the phenomenon then and remote viewing? What?
Okay,
I'm just.
Oh, my bad. Here we go. Lost you. There we go. So his connection with remote viewing, the connection between remote viewing and UFO shit is been long theorized that within, and it's kind of agreed upon in some ways, there's a mental component to interacting with extraterrestrial beings or non-human intelligences. There's like this mental aspect of communication where you don't need to use sounds coming out of your mouth. You could convey ideas and messages wirelessly. You could communicate on a higher plane, right? Mm-hmm. That's what they were doing. You also have to think about this as like the government compartmentalizes everything. Very few people have access to all the things. Hal Puthoff is one of those people. He had access to all the different programs. But like Russell Targ never gets into alien shit really because his focus was purely just examining the phenomenon of, mentalism. The point here I'm trying to make is that somebody like Hal Puthoff and the people that he was directly answering to, they might know the full scope of it. But for people like Russell Targ or the people that are below Hal Puthoff conducting whatever Hal Puthoff is telling them to do, they only know what's relevant to them. It's compartmentalized. So what I'm suggesting here is that the reason that Hal Puthoff is connected with all those things is because they're all connected at some higher level, and he's in charge of the programs that are analyzing independent portions of the greater thing. The mental component is going to be an undeniable piece of this. Whenever this shit rolls out, whenever full disclosure has emerged, there's going to be the realization that there is a higher level of mentalism that most average humans are aware of or are practicing themselves.
Yeah, it seems like everyone that's deep in it goes that direction.
That's what I'm saying. There's some that's Bigelow, like one piece that it's unity. Speaking of Bigelow, Hal Puthoff worked for Bigelow. He was Bigelow's guy in charge of whatever they were calling ATIP or OSAP, whatever that was. Yeah. The Skinwalker Ranch shit. He was in charge of that. Hal Puthoff.
And you were talking about the Basement Files videos from the New York Post earlier. They kind of shit all over that by like saying, or from my recollection when I saw it.
No, they rip it hard. Yeah.
Yeah. That it's almost like a mind virus, and they just gave a bunch of nerds play money.
Kind of
look into ghosts and aliens or something. Like it's kind of how I remember it, but.
Well, it could also be one of those things where even the whole Skinwalker Ranch thing, that could be a cover. Like you get into some strange territory once you start talking about black programs or special access programs, because the way that infrastructure works is a government has an idea for a thing they want to do research. They give that to a military contractor. Now, that military contractor is its own business. It's got its own infrastructure, its own security. They do their own thing. They might occasionally answer to the government, but they're not going before Congress. That's whoever their government connection is. They have to go answer to shit in government. But the actual shit that occurs happens in the recesses of Bigelow Aerospace Technologies, in the recesses of Lockheed, in the recesses of Northrop Grumman, all these big, Halliburton, Wackenhut. These are the people that manage those facilities, and those facilities, they're government. You have to have clearance to go there, but it's a private entity. There's this other facility that's not Area 51. It's called Area 52, and I'm pretty sure it's in Utah. I'm pretty sure the actual name is Dugway Proving Ground, but let me look that up. But the reason I'm saying that is because this facility. There we go. Maybe it's not Dugway. Okay, here, wait. Maybe this is what I should do. What airfield is considered Area 52? Tonopah. Okay, there we go. So Tonopah is same thing as Area 51. It's this isolated airfield, and there's like an iconic row of hangars and bunkers that are associated with the companies that have a hangar there. Lockheed, Northrop, Boeing, of course. Let me see if they have any. No, they don't really list it, but there's like few people have gotten as many pictures of this as they have of Area 51. But it's been long suggested that as soon as Area 51 became part of the common person's lexicon in the 90s, everything kind of moved there. The point that I'm trying to make here is that that's a military installation, but it's not a military installation. The military isn't security there. Those hangars, they don't belong to the military. They don't answer to the military. The military doesn't get to go and see what's going on in there. And by extension of that, Congress and the American people have zero fucking clue what's going on in there. And they never will, because that company is not required to disclose information in the same way that the government would be if the government was doing it through some kind of officially recognized program like ATIP or OSAP. So this is where this
that's kind of how there's like a government within.
That's how that works. And what I think the big resistance to disclosure is the people who are making billions of fucking dollars off of that infrastructure don't want it to go away. And if people understand how we're being robbed, and like they will literally squirrel away money in Congress. They'll present this bill that is a lie. It's just like, we're going to put money to this. And then they just squirrel that money away to fund shit like this. Or you give it to a company and you pay them a shit ton of money and let them do the dirty work and you don't have to answer to it. There's a great documentary that also kind of talks about that infrastructure, not relating to UFOs, but you kind of like see the periphery of the scale of this shit. And it's that Octopus documentary on Netflix. I would highly recommend it. But they go into a lot of strange stuff around this one particular government contracting entity called Wackenhut. And Wackenhut is those are literally the company that does security at Area 51, Area 52. Area 51 does have military on it. But the guys who drive around in the white unmarked trucks, that's Wackenhut. They're not government. They're not required to obey the same rules that the government and military have to. That's why they get those contracts and they can do whatever the fuck they do with it. You know, during the war in Iraq and Afghanistan, there were dozens of secret prison sites that government people were torturing alleged terrorists in and keeping them there for undisclosed periods of time. But Halliburton was in charge of taking care of it. It's not a government facility. It's a Halliburton facility. Halliburton doesn't have to talk about it. Or KNG, whatever that other big military contractor is.
Yeah. Yeah, I find that stuff super fascinating too. Like, and secret machines, that, it's a lot about following the money. And,
that's
private industry. And it's like,
always.
Man, I can't wait for the third book to come out, because I want it all to, like, I want them to tie up all the loose ends. Yeah. And like see how this all fits together, but it all circles back to private industry, though. It's all that's like AUTIP, ASAP. Those were like the first official attempts to get the government to officially recognize this kind of shit. But behind the scenes, military contractors were getting contracts to develop exotic technology for fucking 50 years. 50 years before we're even thinking about talking about unidentified aerial phenomenon. Like this is deep shit. Big fucking money. People will die. They have. Like, there's been plenty of people who have tried to come forward or have been successful in some way and have been killed. So I guess what I mean to say by all this is that the amount of effort that those people would be willing to put into keeping shit the way that it is considerable. And what better way to sell it to people that you need us, that you need the secrecy, that you don't need to benefit from life-changing energy solutions. You don't need to have that. The person that they're using to sell that is Tom DeLonge. We have to entertain that maybe that is the case, especially considering since the beginning, one of the expressed purposes was to sell the idea, to make sure they controlled the narrative on how people looked at aliens and looking at them as some kind of existential threat that we can unite together to fight against. That right there, that conspiracy, the idea that the government is trying to stage a false alien attack, that is way old. That's like way back. It is.
That predates Tom DeLonge. He would just be a part of that.
Man, when I first heard it, like back in, like the 2000s, and I was like, what a wacky idea. But like, as time has gone by, it seems less and less wacky, especially how things have played out, and
that is part of the UFO I'll listen to everybody. Like, I'm not saying don't listen to Tom DeLonge. Or do listen to this person. I'll listen to anyone's story. I'll listen to what they have to say. But when I start to look around at all the things that surround it, I start to see some very, very unsettling inconsistencies and connections with situations that are revolving around the dissemination of a false narrative.
Well, and it's not just us either. I think we had texted about it at some point, but I just finished a series on Netflix. What was it? The 3-body problem. And now, and I looked into it.
People are saying the same shit about that
story, and it's
people
like
are saying
so
the same
many
shit about that.
Yeah. And so, and I found out like, oh, it's a book series and this and that, and like, and it's a terrifying story too. Like, and it, and I read a little bit, and apparently that's how, like, China pushed that book in their own country, even though, it's like
a lot of similarities
going against government and this and that, but there's some narrative that they want
that's valuable
push to their people. And it's, it's very heavy into the phenomenon, and it goes into, like I got, saw some like synopses on the later books, and it goes into like psychic territory, and gets really spooky. And so it's like, why would the government be pushing?
Well, and again, I'll go back to like the stuff that just Hal Puthoff has been involved in. A lot of money and research has been put into the question, is there another mental layer? Is there another mental layer to our existence? that we could be harnessing, a lot of money and research has been put into that. The connection to the alien thing to me is kind of an obvious one, just from the prevailing thought that that's how they communicate. There's like a hive mind mentality, or there's some telepathic ability that they have. But the amount of money that has really gone into people at the highest levels, like looking into like what are the true edges of mental ability. It's pretty crazy.
Well, and the parallels too, like if that is some kind of false narrative being pushed through people like Tom DeLonge, it's interesting because it's like the hive mind versus the individual, or like communism versus democracy. Like it's following the exact
now it
story,
starts to look familiar.
Yeah. So it's interesting, and I think Tom has all the best of intentions, and I think he's just so curious and fascinated by life, and like way to be, and it's
well, and I'm not, again, like I won't even say everything he's been told is fake. We can get into Richard Doty here for a second for good reason, but that's how spreading of disinformation works, is you put out some stuff that is true, but then some stuff that is false, and then discredit the false stuff, and that in turn discredits the true stuff. Makes people think that it's all a fucking scam. That's how that is the playbook. So
what's interesting with Tom though is like he said in a few interviews, like or maybe I'm just thinking of one, but he mentioned that he was told something and then he didn't sleep for days, and he often does say, if we understood what these guys are dealing with, then we would understand the reason for the secrecy, and we would we would agree with it and be like, all right, you guys do what you got to do. And so it's like, okay, what was he told that made him so certain that the government, this, government within the government, is so friendly and has our best interests in mind, for humanity, like it. And what is so scary that he was losing sleep over, what convinced him?
Reptiles harvesting humans for adrenochrome. I'm gonna guess that's where this shit is headed.
Yeah, that's kind of my guess. Like with the whole, I think Jacques Vallée talks about it too. Like maybe we're in some kind of control system, and just don't even realize it because we haven't looked for the patterns. But that was something I was listening to earlier on that Patterns podcast. I'm blanking on the name, but they were talking about how Jacques Vallée was saying in the 70s, he's like, we have to find the patterns and where we can disrupt the controls is the only way to find out if we're in a control system.
So hang on one second. Let me.
But I think that's what Tom is hinting at, though.
This is kind of a reference to Diana Pasulka, who's a huge proponent of Jacques Vallée and collaborator of Jacques Vallée's. He says if you want to understand the UFO phenomenon, you should read this book, History of Satan. It was written in like the fucking 1400s, 1500s, originally in French, I'm pretty sure, but there's English translations now. So, Jacques Vallée, and Diana Pasulka, I think both are of the mindset that a lot of this shit is even known about, and at the higher levels of the priesthood of some of these religions, words that we know to mean one thing actually mean different, like angel and demon and God even. But I do find it interesting that Jacques Vallée he's been on this tip for a long time. Even the book
he was so ahead of everybody.
Yeah, no, dude, the book that Diana Pasulka references all the time, The Invisible College, he wrote that fucking decades ago. He was definitely on top of this shit, and looking through history to see if he could spot patterns. But again, like that could also be a lot of the people that he ends up bumping into are like Hal Putoffs and a lot of the other names that you come across. So it's like, unless he was directly involved with government programs, and even if he was, it's not to say he would have the full picture. He would just see a taste, and whatever. I just know that whatever the perspective of the American government is to what they're doing, it's always going to be the best. Like, we're the good. We're doing this because we're good.
Yeah.
But what I don't think they're the best at is objectively saying is like morally or ethically, should we be doing this? Or should we be doing it like this? They're not the best at that. They're very good at secrecy, and they're very good at justifying the ends. But I think it's like this is the point at which I feel like it's super important to bring up Richard Doty. So Richard Doty is a guy, there's a documentary film about him and his activities called Mirage Men. It's an incredible documentary. Talked about it a bunch on the show. And Trevor Paglin even has a great rundown, and for a while had an art installation about Richard Doty. But his rundown is on his Twitter page. I recommend checking that out. Anyways, Richard Doty was in charge of disseminating false UFO information into the UFO scene so as to discredit the people who posed a security threat to the government by possibly leaking information about classified technology. But this is going to sum it up better. Mirage Men suggest there was a conspiracy by the U.S. military to fabricate UFO folklore in order to deflect attention from classified military projects. It prominently features Richard Doty, a retired special agent who worked for AFOSI, the United States Air Force Office of Special Investigation. Oh, shit, I need to fucking listen to that. Do you watch any Adam Curtis documentaries?
I don't think so.
Oh, man, he's a killer BBC documentarian. His shit is so sick. I would highly recommend checking it out. But I can't remember where I saw this or like what the actual connection is. But there were a few people who were involved at the very beginning of To the Stars Academy that also had connections to Richard Doty. And even if there isn't like a hard line saying Richard Doty was involved with it, because I don't think he is. But what I'm saying is that this guy was doing this on behalf of the military, spreading disinformation. And even the fact that we were joking, now he's like a convert. Now he knows all these details about aliens and he's telling them. And I can't help but think we can't trust anything that he says, but people still do. I don't know. That literally there's been a documentary made about how this guy, he drove one guy like completely nuts. He drove one UFO guy completely nuts. It was dirty business. And again, it was all under the guise of we need to protect national security. We can't have these secrets leaking out. We have to control this narrative so no secret thing that we're working on gets leaked. I don't know, man. It's just really, that's where I have a hard time believing if it weren't people, I'm more inclined to believe lower level people in the government than I am to believe higher level people, because higher level people are more inclined to protect the institution. The lower level people, the David Grushes, the pilots, the Edward Snowden whistleblowers, Those are the people I'm more inclined to believe, because less of their reputation is based on the reputation of the institution, if that makes sense.
I was going to ask earlier, do you think Grush was manipulated into...
I'm sure some of the shit
happened?
he heard wasn't 100% accurate.
Yeah.
But I also believe that the people that he was talking to, and he even said that, like, some of the higher level people he were talking to were like, get fucked. I'm not telling you anything. But then the lower level people were like, dude, I had a horrible fucking experience and here's what it is. And nobody ever did anything about it.
Yeah.
That to me just kind of reinforces that idea. And that's also why he's deliberately always been like, I'm not putting words on this. I'm keeping this as broad as I can. I'm just telling you what I've heard. And some of this shit is verifiable in these ways. Again, people want to shit on him, but no one heard what he said in the fucking skiffs. Like nobody can hear the classified shit he has to say. So,
and did you notice that his op-ed never came out in February, and he's just kind of been
in limbo,
out of the public eye for a while? Yeah.
Yep.
It's crazy.
Yeah. And even I just remember watching like the faces of the people that were coming out of the first one that he did. And they were just like, like they must have heard some really disturbing shit.
Yeah.
But again, I'm not saying that all of it's right. I'm just saying that at some point the cream will rise to the top. At some point, the most relevant. There's just, with this topic in particular, there's so much bullshit on top of official government channels. People just make shit up. They'll just make up a story about aliens and be like, oh, well, I know this race and this race does this and this and that. They just make shit up. Well, and Richard Doty did nothing to help that. In many ways, some might argue that the blowback from that is now like an abundance of people who are reporting UFOs that aren't UFOs and draining resources by way of diverting, focus from no threat from actual threats. I don't know.
I think one of the beautiful things about Secret Machines and Tom DeLonge, though, and not that I go into it believing everything he says or everything these books say, but he brings all of these narratives together into one storyline, and I think that's what I can appreciate about it, because you can branch off into this, like Richard Doty or Grush or as you go and research yourself. But he's managed to bring all of this together into a single narrative, and whether the narrative is truth or not, it's still interesting, and to find those connections, and,
yeah, sure.
I'm always unsure of anyone that is very sure of their beliefs,
Yeah.
because how can you be sure unless you've been shown?
Well, I mean, especially in areas like this where it is known for a fact there's false information.
Yeah.
It's undeniable that there is some bullshit weaved in and out of this.
So you have to question all of it, but it's all fascinating though, and
definitely. And it's again,
yeah.
I'm always the kind of person that when I start to learn about something, I kind of want to know as much as I can. So I'm not opposed to entertaining the alternate side of it. But
same.
I feel like with what's known about the effort that has gone in to try and control the conversation around this, it doesn't surprise me at all. It doesn't surprise me, especially you got to think about it in terms of with To the Stars, that would effectively be the government saying, okay, this is the official word of the government. This is the stuff that we're allowing to pass into media by way of people who with access to, who at the highest levels. It's not necessarily a propaganda arm, but kind of a propaganda arm in the sense that it's we know all the information and we're going to tell you how it can be put out there. So we don't disrupt culture or disrupt people's, peace of mind too much, too rapidly
Well, and with this subject, Tom having his team of advisors for all of To the Stars media, or however he goes about it, it brings it both legitimacy while also making it questionable. So it's like anything else in this topic. You're just left scratching your head and like, I don't know, like nothing is static or for sure, it's all just finding connections and trying to make up your own mind. That's
the fun part, I guess. That's the fun part is like, reading the stuff and like drawing the lines in your mind. And, I'm again, like even if Tom DeLonge's true purpose is just to sell the younger generations on the idea of a bigger explanation of the word life, like even if that's the explicit purpose, I couldn't think of a better person to have be like the spearhead of that. And on top of that, like I love fucking futuristic content. I'm a futuristic kind of person. So to see more TV shows or more, even if they're just fictional miniseries movies, to see more of that with focus on this subject, I'm 100% for that. Entertain me, please.
Yeah. No, same, dude. I was so stoked to hear about the Legendary.
I hadn't heard of that, but that's going to be fucking sick, dude.
It is. Yeah, I can't wait. So I think they're going to wait to drop the last fiction book probably after that comes out, which makes sense because you want to,
Well, you don't want a Game of Thrones. You don't want another Game of Thrones situation where the last book never gets written.
That would suck if they did that to Secret Machines. I would not be happy.
Yeah. I think they learned their lesson forever on that one. They're going to wait until the trilogy's done before they make the series. I didn't even think about that. Yeah. They were pissed. Like that was a huge problem.
We've got the nonfiction third final book coming out in a month or two. So at least there's that. But so that's the Gods, Man, War series. Mm-hmm. So Gods and Man have both come out. In Gods, a lot of it was just them kind of connecting the phenomenon in UFOs and stuff to religion. Man, I don't even remember. Like I said, the way he writes, I just don't. I'm not very into it. But it's Peter Levenda, I think, was the main author for that. Yeah, and then War comes out in a month or two, which I'm interested in because it's going to be the final piece that sums it all up. So maybe there's some juicy information in there. I don't know, but Lou Elizondo also has a book coming out.
Yeah, it's like another month or something.
Yep. So that'll be exciting to pick up as well.
Yeah, the next year or so is going to be. I mean, every year for the past 3 years has been kind of interesting with this whole subject, but definitely the next 2 years are gonna get a little fucky. I'm super excited.
With all the election stuff going on, I wonder how much more news there will be about it. If maybe it'll be a time to drop a lot of information because everyone's so focused on the election, or the opposite.
That's both of those can be true, and also, the general pressure around the subject. Something is going to happen in the next 5 years that's going to be like, oh shit. Either we're going to realize that it's not alien technology and it's just our very exotic technology that changes the rules a little bit. Or it's going to be that the scope of life is much larger than we have been taught to believe on this planet. And
that's why I'm excited for the Lou Elizondo book. He dives into that stuff occasionally. So I'm sure there's some really interesting ideas in there. So and like new whistleblowers, new we never know. Like someone could drop some shit tomorrow that's like, oh fuck. Yeah. That's it's just exciting to see there still be enough
conversation. Like I spend a fair amount of time in UFO Twitter, and it is unhinged. Like it is still, people are constantly going back. There's a lot of conversation about proving this right or proving that wrong. But there's conversation. Like people are talking about it. There's communities about it 24/7 that are talking about disclosure. That's huge. 10 years ago, that wasn't the case. 20 years ago, at the beginning of the 2000s, when I was getting into this shit, that was not the case. People did not want to hear about it. And now there's, huge sub communities, including To the Stars. That's its own little sub community. So, I to me, that's all like super exciting shit. And even if all we get out of it is a little more super interesting content media that, plays to the things I'm interested in, I'm not going to complain there at all. I can't complain about it.
Yeah, I'm not on the Twitter space, so I haven't seen, but I do sometimes wonder, like, are people actually talking about this, or is this all just my algorithm?
Yeah. Oh no, dude. They are very, there's people's whole online personas are around it. It is fucking nuts. So I just, including the debunkers, again, I'll watch that content. I like to know like the opposing argument to that story. And I don't know if I necessarily have one definitive answer one way about the other, or like, I don't necessarily think I think one way or the other. I can entertain both. And it's still interesting to me. I still want to know. I still want to, hear more.
Anyone that's listened to this podcast, I mean, the basement files from the New York Post, I think, are the best.
Yeah, for sure. Discredit, debunk. Yeah.
Yeah. Because I was really surprised by a lot of the things they dug up on there. So, and I welcome it. Like, I want to know both sides, and he's one of the first people to like really dig deep into it and make you question this entire narrative. So, if you find more, let me know though, because it's, everybody
Definitely
wants to believe, so you find that's easy to find. It's the people that shit all over it that's harder to find. So where it's credible too.
Yeah, there's plenty of people who shit on it, but they don't have receipts. Like people, you need fucking. You want to say something isn't true? Come with a fucking receipt, please.
Right, exactly.
It's not to say I'm just going to believe whatever I hear, but if you're really trying to discredit something, you're like, I need proof somewhere. If they're not going to give me proof that it's actually happening, I need you to give me proof that it isn't happening so that I know that. Yeah,
that's how it is with the David Grush thing, because people from Congress trying to look into what he's into his statements and what he testified with, they're getting turned away in every direction, and they're why would that be? If there's no there, then why are they getting turned around every time they try to look into this? It's that alone says so much. It's like, okay, there's something we don't know what it is.
100%.
There's something going on that they don't want anyone to see.
Well, and dude, like if you just look at the money that defense contractors get to do some of the shit that they do, the explicit stated purpose of some of these of some of the known things, it stops being less crazy. Like when you start to look into that world and realize how true it actually is, like how much of America's economy is dependent on just secret programs and defense contracting.
Yeah.
It stops being so unbelievable, and it's like, oh, what they spend on us here on the top level is nothing. We don't get any of the cool shit. That all is in a fucking bunker somewhere that none of us have access to. Our roads are just going to crumble like that. You know what I mean? We're just going to have food and water shortages, but they're totally fine in these, it's a whole different world, man. It's hundreds of billions and trillions of fucking dollars of money goes to these, programs to develop, some shit that never even gets used. A lot of it never gets used. WD-40, You know why it's called WD-40? Because they had 39 other fucking versions of it. And it was originally supposed to be a coating on stealth planes to give it less friction at the top portions of the atmosphere. And then they get to 40 and realize, it doesn't really do what we needed to do here, but as a deruster, it works great. And then that's where WD-40 comes from. Area 51 shit.
That's crazy. I didn't know that.
So,
that makes sense, and they always say, they're, 20 to 70 years ahead of what the public knows about.
Yeah.
At any given moment,
Yeah.
So
that's where all the money's going. R&D.
Yeah.
We get the fucking scraps, and even that gets wasted. we get the scraps, and that gets squandered by fucking city contracts to friends of the mayor. But anyways, that's a whole different tirade. Daniel, I want to thank you for coming on the podcast again. I also know one of these nights just did a new song. Anything you want to shout out to the folks?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me. I love talking about this subject as always. And but yeah, one of these nights we got a single out now with my buddy Dave. We're on Spotify, YouTube, all the stuff. And I got another project. I've actually been working on it for 4.5 years now, but it's called Task Kill, like the computer command Task Kill. We've got our first single coming out on August 1st. And that'll be everywhere, Spotify, YouTube, Twitch, all the stuff. And we've got a single dropping pretty much every month and a half with that project. So, super excited about it. So if anybody remembers by then, check it out.
Well, yeah, I was going to say too, after the next book comes out and you've had a chance to read it, like, well, let's hear the new developments. Yeah. Like, I feel like the one thing that is interesting about To the Stars to me is that if anything else, it is the tip of the spear in terms of what the government wants that narrative to be. Like To the Stars is getting it first. That is established to me that has become the communication mechanism of this type of information. So after that next one comes out and you read it, we'll definitely have to do another one.
Yeah, totally down.
But all right, dude, thank you again. Stay on for 1 second here after I stop recording. I'm going to do the credits here. This has been the Totally Legitimate Business Podcast. Like, subscribe, join the Patreon. We've got so many interesting extra clips over there too. It's been fun, and we'll see you on the next one, folks. Totally Legitimate Business Podcast.
This has been the Totally Legitimate Business Podcast. The end. With your host, James Oliva. Executive producers, Clint G and James Oliva.
Literally no one cares.
Sound design, mix, and master by James Oliva.
When will this end?
Thank you for listening. Now get back to work.
Move it along, buddy.